Jenny Cross. I got thrown out of my house due to domestic violence from my stepfather, and my mum said that she was still in love with him, and so didn't really want a daughter, she wanted a kind of husband instead.
My name's Sabby. The first time round it was a misunderstanding. My mum sent me to the shop for a loaf of bread and some milk, and while I had gone to the shop she changed the locks on the front door. So I thought that was her way of saying you can't live here anymore. So I was a very angry teenager, and I just lost my temper and sort of flew out the house.
At that time I couldn't actually have a conversation with her, not in the full sentence from her. She used to just get really angry and aggressive. And that time when I changed the lock, I changed it because she'd let certain unsavoury people into the house, who I knew she couldn't trust, I couldn't trust. And that day when she just stormed out of the house, I felt really devastated, because I knew she wasn't coping with life.
Well, I was 15, and when I first got thrown out, and she took me back to live with her. I stayed with my friend's uncle for a bit, and then she had me back for 2 weeks, and then she threw me out again, and then she had me back for 2 months, and then threw me out again, and it kept pretty much repeating itself over and over again until I was nearly 17. Well, I grabbed some of my things and I went down to my friend's house and I was like, "Hey, I'm homeless." And and then I stayed at hers that night, and then it was just pretty much sofa surfing or sleeping in the park, which was scary.
I didn't know where to go or what to do, but somebody told me, they directed me to the Hastings Borough Council.
It was horrible. I just always felt like a burden on people's families, and every single night you go to a different person's house, and they'd be sat around with their family and everything, having really good discussions about what they did in the day, and they'd just all be so nice and safe and secure, and then there was me, this girl who had no family, and it was just a bit awkward.
I thought if I moved out of home, then I'd get a flat just like that, and I'd be comfortable and could do my own thing and have parties, and what the picture I had in my head is nothing like what happened. To be honest, I was completely gutted.
Extracts told me to go to the council. I don't know, I was expecting them to put me in somewhere lovely straight away, I think. They put me in a horrible B&B, and there was some people who were about 30 years older than me in there, and they would shout and scream at each other, and I got chased up to my room where there were heroin needles on the floor, and it was not very nice. There was nobody who was nearly my age, there, and it was just really lonely and horrible. I think the proper word for that would be scary. It wasn't a nice place. Kids should not have been put there, and that's what I was. I was still a child at the time, and I should not have been allowed to live in a place like that.
I've got a brother and 2 sisters. They were frightened and angry, and they just didn't want to know. I was put into a youth hostel. I was kicked out of there because I had mental health problems, and I used to take overdoses regularly. I was into drugs, drinking, illicit drugs, drinking. I was really messed up,
I felt guilty because I hadn't realised that she'd been using drugs up until then, because I thought all her outbursts and that were just like normal teenage, behaviour. Because obviously I'd had 3 other children who'd gone through their teens. I would say to anyone else who's in that position, you know, go and stay with a friend for a couple of days and then come back and try and talk. Because I really wish more than anything that she hadn't walked out that door.
The second place that I went into was the hotel, which it was okay. I mean, you know, obviously every 16-year-old's going to kick off about a curfew at like 11:30 at night, but whenever I had a problem, the staff there were really friendly and they helped me out, and yeah, and I was really sad to leave there. And then I went into 2 different hostels. And the first one was like really nice, it was like a home, and the second one was, because it was like, you know, semi-independent and had to start doing stuff for yourself and couldn't rely on staff. It was a bit lonely at first, but it got me used to, you know, the idea of living alone. And then the first flat that I got in St Leonard's, it was okay. Everybody in the block of flats like was from like Kurdistan or Iraq, and so sometimes the language barrier was a bit intimidating, but it was a nice little flat. And yeah, until like it started getting broken into, and until like my boyfriend ruined things for me. My boyfriend moved in with me like unofficially, and he like started beating me up, and like he wasn't very nice. Well, it's really hard because when I was so lonely and I didn't really have anybody, and it just made me like want to grab onto the first person that came into my life, and that was my ex-boyfriend. And yeah, and I don't know, I just needed people around me, and it didn't matter what kind of attention they gave me, whether it was like positive or negative. It was just, you know, somebody to be around. And I told the council that I couldn't live there anymore because of him. Then finally the council decided to move me in November, and they moved me into another flat in Hastings. I'm living there at the moment, but I have to sleep on the floor because there's damp all throughout the property.
I was mixing with the wrong sorts of people. You know, they were probably very ill themselves. I was just a very angry, aggressive teenager. There was no reasoning with me. I was having counselling because I had an eating disorder. I had anorexia and bulimia. It must be my 16th or 17th birthday. I ended up in a mental hospital. I was the youngest person ever to have that happen to in this area. This went on for about 7 years, this cycle, and for a very long period of it, I was in hospitals.
The mould and damp and condensation has been really severe for about 4 months, and there's cracks in the walls as well, and I get puddles of water on my floor every day where I'm in the basement flat. Pictures that I had of like my family from when I was little, and cuddly toys that I had when I was little, they've all been destroyed as well. This other man came round to my house like a couple of months ago, and he was going around just like looking at everything and taking pictures and making notes. And then I got a letter sent through in the post saying that I was being evicted by the landlord due to the fact that the work on the building was too extensive to carry out whilst I was still living there. So I'd have to find myself another accommodation before December.